started. Thank you everybody for coming. I want to welcome Sheriff Woody. We're very happy that you're here.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and making this presentation. I've seen it. It's awesome.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to do it.
Well, thank you, Madam President. We're glad to be here and looking forward to the presentation and questions.
Okay?
And Vice
Yep.
Chair.
Yeah, we thought it was.
Absolutely.
I have Colonel Walter Alderman right here. He's going to do most of the presentation and the explanation of it. So at this particular time, Walter.
Good afternoon. And I would like to thank everyone for inviting the Sheriff's Office to be here today to talk about why we feel as if there's a great need in the city of Richmond for a new facility. And I would like to start out by saying that we need to take a look and see who actually lives within the Richmond City Jail. Because you notice that during the presentation, we will oftentimes refer to them as being residents as opposed to being inmates. But when you look at the jail itself, you will find that we actually hold people who are charged with misdemeanor offenses as well as serious offenses such as murder, rape, and robbery, and other offenses of felonies. When you look at the statistics of the jail, stats in the jail, you find that 35% of the people who actually are housed at the jail have been fully sentenced by the court. 7% of those who are actually held at the jail are DOC inmates. 8% of serving sentences are awaiting trial on at least one pending charge. But when you look at that slide, one of the interesting things to note is that 57% of the residents at the jail is currently awaiting trial. I want to repeat that again, 57%. Then when you look at that, when we left the jail today, we were actually holding roughly 1,371 people there at the jail. 1,371. When you sit there and you figure out 57% of that, roughly 780 people there we are housing at the jail are awaiting trial. And that's a lot of people. I would also like to say, as we hold our discussion, that the sheriff does not determine whether the new jail is proposed to be built. He does not decide the size of the jail. He does not determine as far as who is actually housed there at the jail or who is sent to jail. Those decisions are made by other people, city administration, the city judge, city council, even down to the mayor. We have no input as far as who actually come to our jail and serve time in our jail. So the question is, what authority does the sheriff have? The sheriff has input as far as into the design of the facility. He's also responsible for running the jail or operating the facility after it has been built. And those authorities actually given to him by the Code of Virginia. When you look at the history of the Richmond City Jail, the Richmond City Jail was built in about 1964. And it was designed to temporarily house roughly 616 male offenders. That's 616 male offenders. Now, even though we talk about the jail, oftentimes you hear us talk about the jail that was designed to hold 864 residents at the jail. That was when a new portion of the jail was added in about 1998. Now, when the deputies were first assigned to work within the jail, there was no issue of overcrowding. The jail was quiet enough, but they did not need radios in order to communicate. They could actually communicate through a PA system that they had set up within the jail. Under existing design, when you look at the jail, it's built with cinder blocks and concrete and reinforced with steel. The average population when the jail was built was about 500 residents. The vast majority of people who lived at the jail were housed in the dormitory-style housing, with about 70 individuals on each tier. Now, I want you to keep track of that number when we talk about 70. The jail is made up of predominantly three-story buildings. 3 of the buildings are actually dormitory-style buildings. And you look at the picture that came up, that was an architect proposal for the jail in the 1960s when it was actually built. Keep in mind, when I was talking about when it was built, it was designed to hold about 70 persons on each tier. We're currently housing about 130 persons each day on each tier. The existing facility, 4 additional buildings are there, which are designed, which have single cells in a 3-story format. They're used to house the persons who are sick, mentally ill, or extremely down. And we can hold about 24 individuals on each floor. Now, this is an interesting slide because if you've ever been into the jail, you'll know that we don't have any elevators there. There are very few ramps. This is an indication of a person who was there at that facility who was a sick person. No elevator. So the person had to be escorted up and down the hall by two of our employees, two deputies. And if you notice in the person's right hand, what do they have? They have a cane in the hand which could potentially be used as a weapon against our staff that is working at the jail, which means unnecessary risk for the employees that work there. And on the female housing side of the jail, this was an addition that was added to the jail in about 1989. When this section of the jail was built, that's when we went from 616 to about 854. But when you think about this, when that section of the jail was originally built, it was not designed to hold females. It was designed to house additional males who were going to be sent there to the jail. Under the concept of this, you will notice at the bottom slide there's a female who's sitting there because what they did was once it was built, they actually turned it over and said, no, we're going to use it to house the female residents there. Because when the jail, like I said, was initially built, it was not designed to hold females. The female at the bottom is doing what they actually call, they're monitoring the activities there under the concept that's called direct supervision, which means they can see all and just about hear all within one of the pods. Now, when you look at the number, I said 1,367 is what we're housing today. Female population back in the 60s or early 70s was non-existent. We currently average now housing about 200 females there at the jail. And as everyone now knows, there's no air conditioning at the jail. The temperature can hover well above 100 degrees throughout the jail. And even though the newspapers talk a lot about the temperature and so forth and how the residents there are being housed in those big environments, you also have to think about what the jail employees are going through. Because at times it seems as if we are serving time, just like the residents there are serving time as well. And the other thing is that we look at the jail back in the 60s, they didn't have to deal with the issues of gangs. When you look at our population at the jail, it's not just the males, but you also have to look at the females because you find that some of them are also members of gangs. And we have to house them at the jail. So just don't think about it being a male thing, it's a female thing also. The old design of the jail, it was a dormitory. I will often say that it was used to warehouse, it was not used to rehabilitate. There was no space within our current facility for classrooms. There was no design within in the old jail for medical infirmary. And no consideration was given at that time as far as what to do with those that may have some type of mental health issues. There was no elevators that was built. Programs at that time was an afterthought. The concept was designed to hold about 600 people, but the chapel was designed to hold 40 people. So how does it work now? When you currently look at the design of the jail, when a person is arrested, they're actually processed 3 times. They're processed at the lockup first, where they're processed as far as photographs been taken, fingerprints been taken. Right across the street, 501 North 9th Street. Then when they're transferred from the lockup, they have to go through the quartermaster section, processed again, where they have to receive their clothing. And finally, they move up to classification. Classification is the unit that determines or decides where the person is going to be housed at within jail based upon available space. And what I mean by that is because we are already overcrowded, it's not unusual to find people who may be violent housed with people who are there for less violent offenses, where you have misdemeanors housed and felons housed together. Now, in the new design, booking, intake, quartermaster, records, and classification will all be housed together and reducing transportation costs. The new facility would be a combination of single cells and small pods. And when we get to a slide, you'll see more, you have a better idea of what I'm talking about. Programs could be designed tailored to those particular people who are living on a housing unit or pod. And the chapel size could also be increased. Can you imagine what would happen if you had 200 people who said they wanted to go to chapel at one time and the chapel designed to hold 40 people? Also, classroom space would be there for the GED, computer classes, and other job skills. And the medical infirmary would be attached to the mental health unit. Now, this is a slide we put in because we want you to get an idea of what it was like prior to Sheriff Woody being there and taking office in January 1st, 2006. When he assumed office, when he was elected in 2005, due to overcrowding, there were hundreds of inmates or residents who were actually sleeping on the floor each night. There are no water fountains on the tier. and the plumbing is constantly needed repair. And even when we talk about heavy rains or heavy downpours and so forth, it's not unusual for rain to leak into the bottom on the first floor of the jail. We've already talked about the jail population. However, if you look at the other number where it says 1,800, that 1,800 also includes those who may be required to serve time by the court on the weekend, or people who are serving community services. So where do we go from here? And if you look at that, it's talking about pony. That's the planning of a new institution. And the sheriff was fortunate enough, as well as some other members of the command staff, to attend a training session that was actually put on in Colorado. The sheriff had received instructions about what some of the responsibilities are. He knows now that he has input as far as in design, and he's still responsible for the operating of the new jail. Now this right here is a jail, I think it's in Arlington County. This is an example of a day room. And it's also, if you look along the walls, you also see where they have cells. This is a pretty modern facility. Comparing that to what we have now, we'll take it any day of the week. That's an example of a single cell. They can be modified. I think it's 80 square feet. It can be changed around so it can accommodate 2 persons. Now the good thing about that, in each cell, there's going to be the possibility for video conferencing or video visitation. And as I said, some of the bunks, some of the tiers on the low custody end can be easily adapted to accommodate up to 2 persons in each cell. And if you take note of what you see to the right to look like a computer screen and so forth, that would be going back to direct supervision, where the deputies assigned to the pod will be able to see everything that's taking place within the pod. Now, the new jail is only part of what we need, because if we don't find places for the homeless to go, or we don't find places that mentally ill can be treated, and if we don't find more alternatives to alternative sentencing programs for first-time offenders, make more people available for the home incarceration, we're going to be right back in the same position that we currently find ourselves in when it comes down to the issue of overcrowding. So alternative sentencing and finding treatment for the mentally ill and finding places for the homeless to go is also a very important piece of the puzzle. And those things that you see up there, go back to that, Jerry. Those things right there, it speaks for itself. If we had a new jail, one of the biggest things to look at that is how it's going to reduce or limit our liability. That's a big thing. The other one would be for the safety of the residents, our employees, and the citizens, because keep in mind, on any given day, we have a lot of citizens that come there to the jail for some reason or another, even if it's no more for visitation, they come there to the jail to visit. So we have to think about their safety as well. And it also, the new facility will afford us an opportunity to attract and retain the best and the brightest when it comes down to new employees. If you notice when you go to the second bullet as well as the third bullet, it talks about the use of technology. With any new facility and so forth, technology is an important piece. We use technology now as far as the video arraignment, but also when people want to visit someone, they have to come down to the jail to visit them. Under the new concept of video visitation, being able to meet with the person face to face would actually just about come to an end. They will be able to do visitation through a video monitor. And also, we look at some facilities outside of the state of Virginia, they also allow you to do video conferencing actually on your home computer. And so with the technology we hope to bring into the facility, we will have 2 ways of doing this. Either the person came into the jail for a visit, or they'd be given a time, a date and a time in which you can actually log on from your home computer and actually do visitation. And we'll also create more educational opportunities for the jail residents. At this time, I will turn it over to Sheriff Woody. And he'd be able to answer any questions that you may have, or either any members of the command staff can answer any of your questions.
Any questions? Rita?
Is that the way that you do not have the power to turn the inmates away, like you said earlier, something about he doesn't have, he can't tell us or tell the courts or whatever that he does not want to take certain inmates. Is that true?
No, I didn't cover that during the presentation, but that has been something I think the sheriff has discussed. But they would take an act from one of the judges, and we decided to present that to the judge, to say we're not going to accept anyone. But I don't think we've never done that.
No, no.
But you have to take every inmate that comes in there, we
That
have
is
to hold
true.
them until you can send them somewhere else.
Yes, that is true.
And sometimes it can be up to a year or two that they stay in our city
And
jail.
sometime longer, yes.
Longer.
Mhm.
And that means we incur all the costs and everything of that one inmate.
Yes.
But let me give you an example of an arrest that should not have been an arrest. Prior to coming to the sheriff's office for employment, I was actually employed at the Richmond Police Department. And I retired from there and came back to work at the jail when the sheriff came in under the administration. About 9 months ago, an arrest was made in the East End, not in the East End, but in South Richmond, after receiving a complaint. The man was actually a homeless person who was hanging along the Forest Hill Avenue corridor. A complaint came in. The Richmond police officer went there and did everything he could. The man was actually living in a box, if I'm correct, a cardboard box. He went there to try to get the man to move because it was something that the public did not want to see. So they asked the man to move. When the man did not, the police officer warned him the first day, came back the second day, and found that the person was still in the same spot. So what did he do? He did what he thought was the right thing. He arrested the man. He charged him with littering, something to do with littering. I can't remember exactly what the charge was. The man was arrested, went before the magistrate. The magistrate set a low bond on the individual. But where does a homeless person come up with money to make, I don't care if it's a $100 bond requiring them $10 in order to get out. If they don't have it, they don't have it. The court date was actually set for more than 30 days after the person was arrested, which means that the person was set there in jail, only to go to jail to be convicted of a class 4 misdemeanor, which does not get into jail time for him. But the person had to sit there with an alpha soldier for that time. If there was some type of alternative there, the person would have never have been an alpha soldier in the first place.
Excuse me, Colonel, that was strange because he was a double amputee.
Yeah, he was also a double amputee in a wheelchair.
I would just like to say that goes to our alternative sentencing programs, and we are working very closely with the administration now, and they realize, like I do, that it is imminent that we start right now, do not wait until the new jail is being built. But we need to do something about their alternative sentencing right now, because so many people are in Richmond City Jail who should not be in there, and I'm not going to prolong the conversation about that. Just say we are arresting too many people that we are mad at instead of being the ones that we are afraid of. And that's not to throw any say-so of anybody's doing anything wrong. It's just that it has to be a new way, a new paradigm of the way that we are actually doing things. If half of the people that are in Richmond City Jail, some could be out on HEI, the Home Incarceration Program. Some could also be in drug rehabs or alcohol rehabs or mental institutions where they should be. We all know that story. But that part of it is very, very critical that we start now with the alternative citizens and not wait until we build the new jail. As far as I am concerned, all the alternative citizens program should not be anywhere near Richmond City Jail. They should be throughout the communities where they can get not only the proper treatment, but be in the proper environment that they should be. If we're going to build a new jail and just have all the alternative citizen program there, they will feel that they're still up in jail. And our objective is to have better citizens instead of making better criminals. We all agree that, I agree with this administration that the jail should be smaller, because I don't care how big you build a jail, we can always fill it up. Because they're going to be arresting people, and that's the part of it, what we have to do and everything else. If we build a smaller jail, we should build bigger schools instead of smaller jails. I agree with the size that they'll come up with. I don't have any problem with it at all, because if we do on the other end of the alternative citizen, then that's where we eliminate who's coming in. We've already started the CIT program with the Richmond Behavioral Authority. So there's so many things going on, but we need to realize right now even before they start the new jail, that we need to get this alternative citizen program going now, and it starts from the courts to the common attorney's office with the judges and everyone else, because too many people are being, 57% of the people are waiting trial at Richmond City Jail, and I guarantee you, half of those could still be out on bond if they could make bond. So we have to increase pre-trial, give them the help that they need so they can do the work, that they can present the correct information to the judge. So it is a total partnership between council, the administration, of course the sheriff's department, and the community. I have respect for all of the communities, you know, but the jail has to be somewhere. And they need to realize that the jail is a part of the community, and the community is a part of the jail. And the new jail that they are building now in Norfolk is in the middle of the city. No one even know it would be there. You know, this is outdated. Like this Richmond City Jail, fences all around it. You know, hey, built to just hold people. They don't do that anymore. You know, if City Jail was built right there where it is at right now, and with all due respect to the community down there and the district that it's in, the sheriff's opinion is that it would add to the community.
Sure.
Because they are building them different. They look different. Yes, ma'am.
All right, you just about answered the question I was going to ask you. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. Where would you want the jail to be?
Well, all of us know sitting around the table that sheriffs don't have any authority in reference to where the jail is going to be built. I agree with this administration with the site selection that they have already selected, and that's right there, Richmond City Jail. Of course, they can, council has the authority, and everybody knows the authority that they have as far as our location is concerned. But I think right now it's time for us to move on, take the politics out of it. Let's stop playing games and hold things up. The track that we are home, we are closer than we have ever been. And it's time for us to move forward. It's not going to hurt anything where it is. Like I said, it's going to beautify the site. It really will add to the site. And a lot of people haven't thought about it, and I know this is the Honorable Councilman of Women's District, but from where Richmond City Jail is right now, you cannot see a house. It's not a house that can see Richmond City Jail. The bad part that makes the area look bad as it is the barbed wire, and not only that, the dilapidated area up on top of the hill, those apartments and things of that nature. Hey, that's look bad. If people would do what they're supposed to do, it would beautify the community. And that is my opinion on that, and it would expedite things. Hey, if we don't get moving pretty soon, from what I know and from what I'm hearing and from what I talked to all folks out there, we'll be right back at the same place again. We'll be sitting here at close to Sherman, and probably some of us won't, but 4 or 5 years down the road, you know, hey, we'll get there, and we still will not have a new jail. And we need to stop and realize, I know times are tight and everything else, but it's time for us, liability-wise, safety-wise, health-wise, and community-wise, is for us to build a new jail and to build it as soon as possible. It's just too many things going on, and we are closer than we've ever been. Let's do it.
Thank you, Madam President. And Mr. Sure.
Oh, yes, I don't have anything else to say other than thank my staff for coming here to support what I have said. If there's any more questions, we will try to answer them, and if not, we can go back to jail. Yes, sir.
Mr. Tom,
I wanted to ask, appreciate the presentation. As Kathy said at the beginning, appreciate you also making this presentation earlier, for the benefit of the community and so forth. I do think that there's a significant amount of work that still needs to be done as it relates to the community. I do think that their voice has been heard and will continue to be heard by myself, by this council, by the city administration. and all that are involved in the process of looking at a site. I think that selecting site is challenging. It's the kind of thing that most people don't think that they want in their backyard. And, but I think the process of educating the community of what a jail means today versus what a jail meant years ago when we first built a jail is a process that I think that we need to do more to help the city of Richmond and all of the residents of the city of Richmond to recognize what that means and what that opportunity provides. I would encourage you as well that if this presentation is going to be made in the future, that some of the facilities that you show on the internal as the layout of the jail, there is an external structure that goes along with that I think will start beginning to help people to realize the reality, not what we say as it relates to barbed wire fence and all those kinds of things, the reality of more recent jails that have been built so that they can really begin to have an appreciation for that external as well.
So, thank you.
I'm very intrigued by your comments as it relates to the alternative services. I think that, and I'm also intrigued by your comment as it relates to the alternative services not being a part of the jail facility or on the same site where the jail is located. I think that's a very powerful statement. I think the community needs to hear that this is your perspective from a design perspective as to where those services need to be, and that where those services need to be incorporated into the greater Richmond community and not concentrated in one area in association with the jail. So I would encourage you to continue to ring that bell as well. I think that's a very valuable statement to hear being said from the sheriff from a design perspective. The other thing that I think that I really would want to comment on that you said, and that is as it relates to the alternative services. And the period of time that people have got to sit in your jail,
Thank you, Don.
waiting for sentencing. I have not had the good fortune, and I don't know the process of having such, to interact with the judges that ultimately police and our police department as it relates to arrests and who they arrest and what they arrest them for. But when we get to the judges as it relates to how we're going to deal with the alternative sentencing and the process of those sentencing being done and come to your jail and you got to let them in regardless. I am very concerned about us talking about building a smaller jail before we have some assurance that the alternative services is going to take care of that percentage that is currently causing overcrowded situation in the current jail. I don't know what the solution is for that, but I tell you, I think that's Achilles heel for me at the present time as it relates to the smaller jail. I support the smaller jail, and I think I would be happy if we could even build smaller. However, I don't want to be locked into that. My question to you is, with your percentage that you gave of 1,800, you said something about in that number, the weekend. The person said a certain weekend term time.
Yes, ma'am.
Is included in that number?
The current list that we have as far as people who are actually housed at the jail is 1,367. And when you come around to the people who are serving time on the weekend, that number goes up. Because what the judges will say is that you have to report to the jail on Friday afternoon or either Saturday morning sometimes. So that causes our numbers to actually escalate. It can go as many as 1,800 people total.
I'm sorry,
I'm trying to hear, we're trying to overhear conversation and hear conversation. And I'm not.
Eavesdrop.
But I'm trying. I'm trying.
Right,
Hey, what can I say? What can I say? Okay. The number, again, and I'm on eavesdrop.
That's okay, we're good. Humbly apologize. Humbly apologize.
Our current number is, like I said, approximately 1,300 individuals. That does not include the people who have to serve time on the weekend. That number has escalated as high as 1,800 individuals. I don't mean all 1,800 people being people serving time on the weekend, but when you include that number within that, it's been as high as 1,800 individuals.
And our weekend is average between 80 and 125 on a normal weekend.
That's what
That our centers to weekend centers.
Okay, that's what I want. Madam President, I reserve the balance of my time.
All right, thank you. Ms. Bell.
Yes.
That's very kind of you, Ms. Bell.
I didn't know we could do that. I didn't know. Okay. You just reserved it? Okay.
Mark somewhere.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. And I think that my question goes in part to the administration. The two concerns, maybe three. The first concern is the current overcrowding that we have at the jail and what we're doing this fiscal year to address that. And I think that, are we going to get a presentation from, and I'm looking straight at Mr. Marshall now, are we getting a presentation?
On Monday.
Monday, to deal with current overcrowding. Okay, because that's still a reality that we have to look at. And then the second part, and the councilwoman addresses this, if we intentionally build a smaller jail, we have to intentionally come with the package of the smaller jail, and I'm interested in what that number is if we've arrived at it. We have to intentionally come at the same time with the package of alternatives that will allow us to keep that number down. I mean, it comes as a package with the dollars associated, whether it's on-site or off-site, increasing capacity with some other entity. I think it comes as a package, and we would be remiss, and that's putting it kindly, if we did anything other than bring the package that has the smaller jail and the package that has the menu of alternatives included in it, whether it's HEI or pretrial or mental health or substance abuse, and not just that we will have it, but where it will be and where the dollars are that will allow us to address it. Otherwise, we're back to the same, a smaller jail that's overcrowded, that's brand new with air conditioning. There's nothing. Mr. Marshall, I've reserved my time though.
I always reserve my time because we'll talk to you on Monday, but I can tell you two things.
Okay.
One, even though this current jail is supposed to be 1,032 beds,
So that's the number?
1,032.
Okay.
But it will have the ability to be increased to 1,548.
1,548.
So, to go to the smaller jail, we have capacity to 1032, but it can be expanded to 1548. That's one thing. And so, and secondly, we'll talk to you Monday about what we're proposing to do to divert people from the jail, beginning in this fiscal year, but in more in earnest in next fiscal year. The goal, working with the sheriff, is to have this thing fully have the alternatives in full operation for 2 years prior to the jail being built. So we'll have begun diverting people before the jail opens. And we've actually already begun with additional electronic monitoring.
Okay, but just one quick question. The current jail is built to accommodate about 800. But so the numbers you just gave me is a larger jail.
So it will have the ability to be expanded. But if you went to 1032, this is single bunks. If you double bunks, you can get to 1548.
Okay.
That's why it's critical that they be in place now. Like you and the county and kind of converted myself learned in Colorado how important that part of it is. That you have to, if you don't start the alternative system before you build the jail, we'll be in the same situation that we are in right now. If we overcrowded before we even build it.
Okay, so we'll have that package on Monday. And Mr. Marshall, you said HEI has already started in this current, to deal with the current overcrowding.
We're working with the sheriff now to expand that program.
Okay.
And the current
intern. Okay, and we'll get a full report on that as well. We'll have a fuller report on that as well on Monday.
On Monday, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Basically, everybody, thank you guys for coming down tonight.
Thank you for
I
having
really
me.
appreciate it. Do we know on the folks that are serving time pretrial, if any of them are also serving time on a conviction? Several of my clients are have pending charges, but are also pulling time on child support or some other crime.
That's something that we're looking very seriously at and trying to work with the judicial system in reference to those that are serving time for not taking care of their families. I mean, we have a great program to pick them up. The parents that are not, once they get there, then they just sit in jail, they can't work, they can't volunteer for anything, that enter the programs that, to participate in them because of the sentencing that they're given, and they're just wasting taxpayers' money being there. There should be some alternative record they can do something else besides coming to jail.
I agree. My question though is really more, if you're currently serving time
Okay.
and are in the jail for a pending charge, are you classified post or pre-trial incarceration?
You okay?
Excuse me, I can answer that. I'm Roy Woodman. The answer to that question is yes, that 57% will represent both. So you can be sentenced on an offense, and then you could also have an unsentenced offense in that product as well.
And that, so the percentage of pre-trial includes people that may have to be there. It's just they also are waiting on something else.
Correct. Clear.
And then we're talking about the video conferencing. I just want to voice a concern that it not completely eliminate the in-person, even if it's through a thing of glass, for family to visit at the jail. So I think it's really important folks that are there. And then lastly, for folks that are homeless, are there any referrals made when they're released to the streets about where they can go, like to the Conrad Center, to Homeward, or?
Yes, we had referrals, and we work very closely with the Conrad Center and other centers, and we no longer will let them go at 12 o'clock at night unless they have somewhere to stay. We always make contact with them, someone at least keep them overnight.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I give my time to somebody else.
Mr. Tyler?
No, my question's already answered. And
Oh, okay. Thank you. Mr. Tyler, did I see your hand up? I thought I did.
What's that again?
Did I see your hand up?
Yes, ma'am, you did.
Okay.
First of all, I'm trying to understand, start at this end of the table if I may. I'm hearing we're gonna have an informal presentation. At informal, we're gonna have a presentation, and what is that, Mr. Marshall presenting? Where are you presenting, sir?
The last council meeting, there was a series of questions asked about the process used to select the jail site. And included in those questions, we believe should be answers about not only why it's being proposed for this site, how big it's going to be, when it's going to be built, and how the alternative programs will work.
So you're gonna get into the timing discussions and the financing discussion? Okay.
We can talk about costs as much as we know at this
Yeah,
point.
well, I understand. You're in my world, I understand it's budget. Thank you. With regards to the jail currently and the future jail, how do you see your staffing arrangements change with the new jail?
Well, I think my staffing arrangement would actually be less at this particular time than it would be that it is now because of the way the jail is designed. With direct supervision, we will require less of everybody, and it will be safer for everybody because you can observe everything and everybody in actually one place. So I think that my staff will actually be decreased instead of increased. I'm pretty sure of that.
Okay, that's good news, a little bit of good news
Yes.
from that standpoint. I was noticing also in the presentation that you talk about 7% are eligible for transfer to state DOC.
Yes.
Why is the state not taking these inmates, and why are they keeping them in the jail when we are dealing, when they know we're in an overcrowded position? Has anybody ever been able to?
Well, I have a very good working relationship with them. We've averaged, I think, the highest has been what?
We set a record some months back at 101, and that was an all-time record. We currently, though, on a monthly basis, will average right at 34 transfers to State Department of Corrections. And frankly, it's cost effective for them. They know what their time limits are, so they will actually plan and understand that for a particular person who's scheduled for transfer to the Department of Corrections, that they have that window. So it's cost effective for them to reimburse the sheriff at a given rate rather than do that transfer.
What's the difference in cost? Do you have any idea?
Well, the sheriff's office is absorbing the cost of keep. So
Don't we get reimbursed by the Commonwealth?
$12.
That sounds
$12
like
per day per inmate. So it's cost effective rather than
So-
them taking them to their custody.
Cost effective for
And
them.
that
Costs us $41 per day.
Well, that's what I was wondering, what's the per diem
And that's-
at the state level?
And that's at a rate after 90 days. Before that 91st day, it's at a normal rate as anyone else that's currently in the facility. So their rate only increases to 90, so they understand that window and will keep them up until that. It's only at the 91st day where they begin to actually move that individual out.
That's helpful, thank you. That's all I have, thank you.
Ms. Robinson, you had a question?
Use the reserve.
You can use the reserve time
Okay.
wisely.
Wise. I use all my time.
Bless you.
Okay, I want to go back to a question I raised previously, and before that, Mr. Marshall, do we currently have a construction schedule that we are anticipating the progress for the jail?
So you're gonna make me do my whole presentation today?
No.
We assume, our current schedule assumes that we will have to the council proposal by the first weekend of June. And that assuming that that's acted on by the end of July, over like 3 council meetings, that we would actually be able to break ground by December 11th. So about
December,
14 months from now, 13 months from now, 13.
December,
2011.
how does that fit into that 2-year window that you
That's
talked
just
about?
breaking ground.
That's breaking ground.
Then it has to be built. Take a couple years to build.
Alright. So
We're
it's
assuming design
two
will
years
take-
before completion.
Yes.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
one other question. And I guess, I don't know, Mr. Sheriff or Mr. Marshall,
Sure.
which sounds like both the same, Marshall and Sheriff,
That's good.
well, pretty good. All right. Judges and the police, as it relates to their role in this process of determining arrests and sentencing, are we engaged in that discussion at the present time with them as a part of this alternative strategy?
Yes.
Okay.
We would call Mother Attorney's office also to support it for it. I can't speak for Mr. Hearn, but I know that he supports it and that he'll have meetings and that he's working on what he can do in-house as well as to follow judges and talking with them. So that is in play, yes.
Now, my question, the reason I raised that question is because I'm concerned as to whether or not there is a need for legislative policy to be enacted in order that there's opportunity for change. And I've used your previous discussion as it relates to the state, knowing they have 90 days and they just wait it out. As long as that is policy, there we are. At a rate that is significantly less than what it's costing us to actually house that is resident. So I guess what I would ask is that in the deliberation and planning and processes that we're going through, that we would receive back from you all a list of legislative or policy decisions that needs to be addressed and change in order for us to be more effective on the pre-trial sentencing, that side of it.
I would agree to that, but I also might add that I know from a fact from meetings with the Commonwealth Attorney and others that there are some things that the Commonwealth Attorney can do himself without going to the legislature until they change certain things. So it will be proactive. Some things that he can do himself and recommendations and sentencing and things of that nature, working with the judge and things, what he's going to recommend. Some things that he can do himself now until those changes which have to be made by the legislature at a later date. So there will be something going on immediately and has started. Yes.
All right, so I just want to reiterate that.
Yes, there is some
The
change.
legislative list of those policies and changes, I think is something that we all need to be working to
Yes.
try to get that.
I agree, yes.
Okay, and time for one, Stu Bell, and Reba, I was gonna say one more, but you can ask one more too. But remember, if the questions are for the sheriff, we have him here today. If the questions are for Byron, we're gonna get him on Monday. So I would just ask because I know some people probably have meetings at 7. So, I'm just trying to watch the time on it. Cynthia?
I just have one request in terms of the marshal. Since it's going to be about 3 years before this thing is out of the ground, it's even more critical from my perspective that we have a well-articulated plan for this slate of alternatives that will go into action both this fiscal year and into the next fiscal year with the dollars attached. And obviously, they're not going to be on site because we don't have the facility. So in this shorter 3-year period, how are we going to provide those alternatives? We can't, and Sheriff, we'll have we get to pilot every alternative that's on the list at this rate with 3 years to go. So I'm just asking that we have that in the presentation.
That would be in the presentation as well as our estimated costs.
Right.
Over the next 2 years.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
Okay, Reba?
No, I didn't ask the sheriff.
Oh,
The marshal.
nice movie.
Yeah. Reentry programming. I just wanted any comments about the importance of that and implications for reducing the revolving door, if you will.
I would say, as far as reentry is concerned, that is key and that is critical to the overcrowding at Richmond City Jail, but actually even more so is much more important because our #1 goal is to have better citizens instead of better criminals. A lot of people don't know, but in any given day at a crowded theater, 50 to 70% of the people that sitting beside you in that particular theater, either on parole or either have been in the system and out. And so reentry is very critical of keeping people from coming back because the most critical care part of it is what they do when they leave the jail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very important. See, we have been reactive instead of staying proactive.
Exactly.
And so that's what we need to do.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that that was the case with the sheriff so the marshal could hear that reentry programming needs to be on the list as well.
All right,
Thank you.
one more, Reba?
Yeah, sure. You said earlier that you all went on a trip.
Yes, Councilman Newell, Lieutenant Colonel McVert, and myself went to Colorado to a special class up there for 4 days. It's very extensive in reference to designing of the jail, how the jail should be run, and we took a tour of some new facilities up there and on direct supervision. It was very helpful, very informative, and brought a lot of material back that's going to be very beneficial to us at Richmond City Jail.
Are you planning on any other trips to look at the other?
They had a follow-up. They've been back here since then, and we went over some things, and they just talked about the report that they did previously, and there's one more that I plan to get enrolled in again before the jail starts, yes.
All right, thank you very much, Sheriff. This was very informative. And thank you for making this presentation.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much. Have a great evening.
You too. Now the whole audience leaves.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next on our list, we have tax rate.